Marketer of the Day, number 491. Back of the Room Sales and Speaking. Leads, Exposure, and Branding with Alicia White. Hey everyone, we're so glad you're listening. We're talking with Alicia White, and Alicia is a brilliant strategist getting clarity and direction on the next steps in branding, business, and speaking. And working with business owners, coaches, and entrepreneurs, Alicia helps them to elevate their expertise through consistent branding that conveys trust and effective strategies and tools to grow their business through speaking. And she has a book called The Successful Speaker's Handbook: Tools, Ideas, and Strategies to Elevate Your Expertise as a Speaker. Her website is backoftheroomproductions.com and speakersheets.com. You can find her on Facebook at facebook.com/Alicia White 911. So Alicia, glad to be talking to you today.
Thanks so much, Robert.
Yeah. So the speaking stuff. Tell me about it.
Oh my gosh, the speaking is fantastic way to grow your business. When you get in front of a group of audiences and you're able to leverage that time by generating leads and revenue, that's probably one of the quickest ways to grow your business, and better than cold calling. I tell you, Robert, I cannot stand cold calling. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, it terrifies me, right? To call someone on the phone and they're not really sure why I'm calling, or even or just like that one at a time selling. Like, I'm grateful for the customers I have. I'm willing to put in the time and the work and all that, but it makes more sense to go down the path of least resistance, right?
Absolutely. Because when you're sharing your message and it resonates with people, then they want to work with you, and so when you're speaking, you're generating warm leads, and as opposed to getting that list and going down a list of people and cold calling does work. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of people who don't enjoy it, including me.
Right. And then it's like, well, if the cold calling doesn't work, then it's easy for our attention to shift into, paid advertising. And that's a whole learning curve, a lot of baggage, content marketing. And that's kind of a slow process. And any of these sort of online traffic strategies are great, but it seems like they change all the time. But the speaking thing, it seems not necessarily old school, but sort of evergreen, that it seems like it's been around, it will still be around. So why put yourself through all that struggle of trying to learn things and keep up with things when you can just do what's been working for decades and decades, right?
Absolutely. And when you're being authentic and you're being your true self on stage, that will, reach out to the audience. The audience will, gravitate to that. And even when, you look at these TED Talks and people are saying and I don't want people to focus on a Toastmasters policy where you're not supposed to say and ah. And TED Talks are a great example of that you can still be a speaker and not be perfect. I think that's a big myth that people in business are afraid to use public speaking to grow their business because they think they have to be perfect when they get on stage, that they can't say any ahs or ums. And while Toastmasters is an excellent organization to help you hone your speaking skills and get comfortable in front of an audience, they do really hone in on the ums and ahs, but you don't have to worry about that. You can just be yourself on stage.
Well, that's very reassuring, and I think that's an important distinction, that there's the maybe mechanical, technical part of speaking where it's like, do I use my grammar correctly and things like that? And then there's also that component of, well, am I entertaining and emotional, and do I say good things? And if I had to choose between one or the other, for sure, I want to have a powerful message. So I'd rather have the powerful message with a few ums and ahs as opposed to something boring, free of ums and ahs, right?
Exactly. And, it's true that, the more you practice, the better you get. I mean, I remember, can I share a little story about how I got started?
Go for it. Love stories.
Okay. When I started Back of the Room Productions almost 6 years ago, I did not see myself as a speaker. I saw myself as someone providing, design and branding for the coach or the business owner or entrepreneur who wanted to speak. I saw myself doing that because I had been in graphic design for over 20 years. And I remember I had a lot of cheerleaders in my background during that time. And they said, "Oh, you can speak. You need to speak." And I thought, what am I going to speak on? Who wants to hear me speak? And I'm a business owner, but I didn't see the value of speaking. Well, I was kind of tricked into it. I know that sounds crazy. I'd like to, I hate to think that I adhere to peer pressure, but sometimes I do. And so I was kind of pressured into the speaking, and I did. And I saw that people were writing down what I was saying. I was just shocked. I was like, wow, I'm actually delivering value. I honestly didn't think I had value that these people would want to implement themselves. And it was so far from the truth. Now, when I get on stage, I'm not just a graphic designer, I'm also a speaker. And I'm not just a speaker, I'm also a strategist and an international best-selling author. I mean, and that's all because I started using speaking to grow my business. So I'm still doing what I love. I'm still fulfilling a passion, and I've added on even uh, more opportunity to share with others through my branding strategy consultations. And I help people recognize their value, showcase their value and their worth, so that event hosts will want to hire them, or at least, call on them to speak at their event.
Well, super awesome. And I can definitely relate to your story in a lot of ways. Like, you're a graphic designer, I'm a computer programmer, and there's definitely a need to rise above that, I guess, right? And like you said, like,
Yeah.
not change your whole career or your skill set, but there's like the graphic design part, but then maybe going up to like 100,000 foot view, there's a way larger umbrella of like things people need to know about, their branding and their speaker sheets and things like that. And I mean, to be honest, that was a mindset shift that took me a long time to, well, maybe not a long time, but a few years to figure out, maybe longer than I'd like, where it's tempting to be like, well, I can hunker down and do all this stuff in the trenches with the graphic design, but who really wants to hear about, the bleed through on sheets, or different, color mixing, or whatever, things like that? Who wants to hear about the technical things that maybe are exciting to you? Maybe people want to hear more about the branding thing about their business, or what's exciting for them instead.
Exactly. I mean, when I, read up on you, because, that's a good thing to do for when you're about to go on an interview or speak virtually or share at an event, is you want to know about the host. And when I saw your background, I went, well, that's amazing. And it's kind of a natural fit for you to go into podcasting, because that's a techie thing too. But I feel like a lot of people will, who are asked to spend 10, 15 minutes in front of an audience, are leaving money on the table because they're not providing a way to generate leads or even revenue. A lot of them forget about the, hey, go to my website and download this free gift. When you download this free gift, you get value from me. And in exchange, I get your email address, and I'm going to send you an email to see if you'd like to receive more of my communication. And maybe one day you'll want to work with me. That's kind of how that works. And when people in business get up on stage and they talk a little bit about what they do because they've been asked to do that, they forget those integral parts of generating leads. I mean, if you have a book, and I know you have a few books, you can give one away as a door prize, but and while you're doing that, you're gathering business cards. And what does business cards have? It has contact information. And you tell the people, hey, I'm going to draw, one card, and you'll get my book as a gift. And for the rest of you, I'm going to send you an email with a tip in it, or some kind of link to a white paper or a report. And that you're generating leads by using these different strategies, instead of just getting up there speaking for 15 minutes and then sitting down and hoping people will come and talk to you later.
Right. Why wait for that? Why not be proactive? And you mentioned that a lot of people are missing out on this, that they, don't have an offer, or they're not handing out their book, or they're not mentioning a URL or whatever. So, like, why do you think that is? Do you think that they just don't know, or they're too shy to do it, or they're making it too complicated, overthinking it? Like, why the heck aren't more people doing this?
I think there's two factors to it, and I think you nailed it on the head. And one, I just don't think they know. When I started Back of the Room Productions, I saw where it started with one business coach who said, I really need to give something to my audiences after I speak. I want to give them more of me. And I developed a little postcard that had her information, but it also had some valuable tips. And people were picking those up after her speech so that they would take home a piece of her, some of her message. And it has been a long haul of educating business owners and freelancers and coaches that they need to do this and it's okay to do this. I just don't think they know. And it's not that we're trying to get you to be a conglomerate like Tony Robbins, or how Zig Ziglar was, where you're selling DVD sets and book sets and packaging at the back of the room. It's just a piece of that. People, when they're listening to your message, and if you resonate with them, they want to take you home. So why not give them a little piece of you? And it can be as simple as a printed postcard. It could be, you could sell coaching packages. I have a client who, after developing some branding items for her table at the back of the room, she said that she up-leveled her identity and her credibility so much through those tools that she sold a $5,000 coaching package on her first speaking engagement after implementing those tools.
Super
not to mention,
crazy.
not to mention residual customers coming because she offered a program. So I think it's people just don't know they can do it.
Well, yeah, it sounds like they're really missing out if you can just show up to an event, speak for 15, 20 minutes, and have people in the room who are in a lot of ways pre-qualified, right? Because they're willing to get up off the chair in front of the computer and get out there and sit for however long what the event is, and actually pay attention and focus on what's being said. And especially if it's a kind of situation where, if there are other speakers and you provide things other people don't, or if some of these other speakers are missing out on providing an offer and things like that. And, as you're explaining some of these things, one thing that comes to mind is, it's important to maybe run this by the event organizer, right? Like if you're going to be handing out like your book or a postcard or a URL or something, is it a good idea to maybe talk to the person running the event first and like make sure these things are okay?
Absolutely. If when you are asked to speak, there are some things you want to ask, some that benefit you and some that benefit the event host. Ask them what is allowed. For example, I gave a speech to about 400 individuals at a women's conference, and I was a keynote. I asked, may I have a room at the back of the may I have a table at the back of the room? They said no. Okay. May I make a pitch from the stage? They said no. And I really respect that when speakers are asked not to pitch from the stage. I do respect that. I said, okay, how can I do this? Finally, I asked, may I have a volunteer hand out a brochure at the door as attendees come in? And they said yes. So always be asking what if they say no, ask another question. Ask until they say yes.
Well, have you ever asked, just out of curiosity, have you ever asked like again and again, and then it was like almost down to like nothing? Was there ever a time where it was like 5, 6, 7 no's until you got something?
It was actually that event because I asked, will you be providing me with a recording? No. Okay. Will you provide me with photos from your photographer? No. I I asked so many questions. How can I get qualified leads from this? While I did not get qualified leads, now I will say I did get paid, but it barely covered my expenses going down there. I did get contacts from people that led me to prospects. For example, there was a lady in the audience who said, I loved your story. I loved everything that you shared. I think this would work for an associate of mine. And she gave me that contact. So, and when that works out in your favor, then it's worth the time and effort to, take on those speaking engagements. And also, if you're trying new material or well, I'll get into that maybe later, but it is worth taking that risk.
Yeah, I mean, what do you have to lose? I mean, maybe a little bit on the travel expenses or break even, but I mean, worst case scenario, spent a day or a couple of days in your travel time, but then got some new leads to follow up with. And you know what, you mentioned the table thing a couple of times, and like I have to be honest, like I've done a little bit of like free speaking where I was able to hand out an offer sheet and do that sort of thing. And then I've also done some free speaking where I handed out my business cards, got my business cards and things like that. And I keep like over the years, like I've seen the table thing where like somebody paid for a table at a room, and I'm thinking like, okay, well that seems pretty straightforward. Like you see if they if either they provide that or you ask for that and figure out how much that is. But then a lot of people have like a really sort of slick setup, and for some reason that has me blocked. Sometimes I'm thinking, well, I'd like to be able to do that, like if I were speaking and have a thing in the back, in the table in the back. But then sometimes they have like a flower vase or some like cool stuff standing up, and I'm just like, maybe I'm overthinking it. So I mean, what are your thoughts on that? If you were to say, I'm gonna do this speaking gig and I want to look into the table in the back thing, like when would you do it or not do it? Like when is the price too much for that sort of thing? And then what are your thoughts on the fancy setups on the table and all that?
That's a great question. So one of the things you asked, well, first of all, when do you decide to speak? You qualify your engagements at your events, and if you have at least, I use a 60% target audience. You got to know who your target audience is. I want at least 60% of my target audience in the group. Otherwise, why would I take a chance of speaking to, an audience where only 10% of my ideal client lives? For example, when I met you at the Sacramento Speakers group, everybody in there was a target audience because they were going to a speaking meeting, and I speak to speakers. So that was a perfect fit. I've gone to business audiences and have been able to talk about branding. So also you look at what topic are you going to speak on? Are they your ideal client? And will the audience, be made up of 60% or so? Some people have different parameters. Some want 90% of the audience to be their ideal client. When you, once you figure that out, then how much do you pay? All right, well, let's look at your funnel. You always have to look at a sales funnel, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners here are familiar with a sales funnel. For those that aren't, you look at your funnel. What is your free or entry level products? Your $5, $10, $20 level products. Then what's your next level product? What is it priced at? Is it priced over 100, over 300, over 500? That's what's going to help you negotiate how much, or help you define how much to pay for a table. So if your next level in the sales funnel is a $500 product, then spending $350 on a table, it would be worth it, because if you get just one client, you've paid for that table. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It makes it less of a painful decision, because sometimes it's like, well, I don't know if I should spend 350 or 500 on that table. But I mean, I love that way of thinking, and that's sort of the thing that I put into for if I'm doing like paid traffic, which I guess in a way buying a table is a form of paid traffic. I'm always thinking, okay, if I'm selling this $500 product, I'm not gonna blink too much about $50, $100, $200, because my thinking is, all right, if I blow $500 on this and I don't make any sales, then okay, that was an acceptable risk. But if I just make one sale, I break even or make a little bit of money. So I mean, I can definitely relate, and I agree with that way of thinking of, okay, well, if I make the one sale, it's worth it.
And And here's what's really cool though, with a lot of the strategies that I provide, when you have, even if you make that one sale, you still have prospects that You've collected warm leads. So just because one person bought at the meeting doesn't mean that there won't be others who will buy. You can perhaps you sell something at a discounted price at 500 for that meeting only, for that event only, and later the price goes up. Well, you can go to the people who were there at that meeting and say, look, I can't give you the event price, but I can sell it to you for less than what I would normally charge. So let's say it normally costs 750 and the event price was 500, then offer it to them for 600, and they're still getting a deal, but you're still going to do your follow up. You're still going to be collecting leads, like the offer sheet that you pass around. On that offer sheet, always have a place where they can fill out their email address, their name, and put a little check mark next to the question, the very important question: may I send you communications? May I send you tips through email? Whatever that wording is for you to get people on your email list, have them check that box, put their name, their email address, and get that back to you. So you may do a little two-part sheet, or have something that tears off, or you can do that. But have them give that back to you instead of them hanging on to your sheet, because they're hanging on to your sheet, but you didn't get anything back. Well, how do you get them back? And when you're on stage, you instruct them. Now, look, I've got a lot more ideas on to share with you. We don't have enough time today to do that. So sign up, put your name down on this line, check the box, and I'll send you some more information. That's a great way to get those leads, and you follow up on them.
I love it. That's a nice tweak. And it sounds like a lot of these strategies here you're laying out are ways where, if people either, have landed these speaking gigs, or maybe even hesitating about speaking gigs, if they either had bad experiences, or they're concerned about maybe not making their money back, or making some money back, but the event not being worth their while. These are all really great ways of maybe salvaging that, or even better, like multiplying the amount of money they make. So whereas before they might have just, sold one package, or might have sold a couple of books, but by having the tear off in that offer sheet, so that way you can get them on a list. I mean, they might not be ready to buy now, or they might not be ready to buy that thing, or not have the budget, or whatever the reason is. And then weeks or months from now, because you collected that, you put them on a list, you followed up, you might be able to massage a lot of extra money out of just one speaking gig.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, there have been times that I didn't have the right, pitch. I didn't have the right offer. And so the next time I offered something different. And that was kind of a win. And then the next time I offered something different, and that was the golden ticket. And went, oh my gosh, now, after all of these years, I have perfected my presentation so that I get to do exactly what I want with the people I want to work with. How cool is that?
It is super cool, and you can try out different material, almost like a stand-up comedian, and figure out, where either what's good for you, or it's like you alluded to a little while ago, you can have maybe like your main presentations where you have the one on the branding, the one on speaking. And so that's another way that it's reassuring that even if maybe the first few speaking gigs we're not 100% sure what we want to talk about, but over time that can really evolve into something really cool and fun that helps people, that makes us money.
Yes, absolutely. And
so,
then, yeah.
Oh yeah, and I mean, one thing, we're kind of starting to run out of time here, but something that I'm really curious about is so you said that when you look for your speaking gigs, you are hoping to get 60% or more of your target audience in the room. And so, do you have a favorite way of finding these gigs? Is it just a matter of networking and having friends and always asking or keeping an eye out, or do you do anything aggressively or proactively to find new events to speak at?
I will sign up for opportunities. Most of my gigs come from people that I know and referrals. I'm very fortunate in that what I have to share is a hot topic right now. Speaker tools, speaker products for speakers, and of course branding and such. And the best way to go about it is start telling people you're a speaker. If people don't know you're a speaker, then they can't refer you. And start going to your networking groups, your chamber of commerce, your Rotary clubs, your local nonprofit clubs, and start doing the 10 to 15-minute speeches at those clubs. Practice your presentation, get good, and then start meeting with directors of meetups and other event organizations and say, hey, as a matter of fact, Robert, I remember a friend, I was at an event and there was a lady talking to another lady, and they were talking amongst themselves, but I happened to be standing there. And one lady said, I'm going to hold an event. And she asked the other lady, would you be a speaker? And she goes, oh, sure, I'll be a speaker. And I looked at her and said, can I speak? And she said, sure. I mean, ask, can I speak? When you start hearing those opportunities.
I love it. It's just that easy. And so some other thing about this whole speaking thing, like I always feel, at least for me, like I don't know, like I never really have time for it, and it's always one of those things where sometimes these speaking opportunities fall into my lap, but it's definitely not very consistent. I always tell myself like I should be doing more, I should be finding the time for it, things like that. Do you recommend that we maybe set aside a certain amount of time every week, every month to maybe to have free for these speaking gigs, or to find more? Or do you think that's important to maybe set aside a certain amount of time on a regular basis, or is that something that you do?
What I do is I look at the year and I determine, where do I want to speak? What do I want? Who's going to ask me to come back as a speaker? I have a couple of places that will ask me to speak at their events annually. And I look at where those are placed. Then I look at, how many workshops am I hosting? How many clients do I expect to have? Where's my vacation? And I will try to fill the holes there on where I'm going to speak. Now, I've been doing a lot of speaking around the nation versus my hometown here in Dallas. And this year, I'm going to make a concerted effort to attend networking events so that I can start ramping up my speaking for 2019. So I'll be doing a lot of networking in 2018 with the hope and the plan of speaking at several events in Dallas. So I'm not having to travel to speak, because that will eat up a lot of time too. That could take 3-6 days. Whereas, to speak once or twice, whereas if you're local, you can find places. Just start looking and networking. And yes, and carve out the time. Yes, carve out some time, and also time to develop those tools that you need and those products. Get a budget of how much you can spend on, creating a speaker sheet, a banner. You were talking about having a table at the back of the room. The woman who had the $5,000 coaching program, that was based off of promotional products that we had, a retractable banner and a poster that had her identity and her message clear and concise.
Well, super awesome. Okay, so basically, some of the speaking stuff takes a while to get rolling. So get it happening early, so that way you can fill out the calendar and then figure out how it fits into your lifestyle. If you want to travel or you want to plan it around your vacations, that's one option. Or if you maybe either don't feel like traveling or have other obligations, or whatever the reason, then find things in your area, so that way you don't have to go far for what you want. So I mean, this is all really great stuff, and you really opened my eyes to a lot of things about speaking, and most importantly made things simple, because sometimes you see some of these speakers that they really have it all put together with their speaker sheet and their author and their talk, and it's so well polished, and it can be a little intimidating to be like, oh geez, where do I even start? How do I even get to that level where it seems like they have all their bases covered, they have their table, they are great with networking, they have their offer, but what I'm hearing from you is like, just get started, just figure it out as you go along. So I mean, it's really great to be reminded of a few things, but to learn a lot of things in our session here today. And because you're a speaker, I'm sure you have an offer. So I want to make sure that when people here have got their appetite whet and they want to hear more about speaking, they want to hear more about you and what you do and what you have to offer, they're not just left hanging because That's no fun, right? Like, I mean, imagine if you put in a lot of work in school and then you didn't even get the grade, didn't even get the test, didn't even get the credit for taking that class. That's no fun. So maybe people picked up a few tips and tricks here, but they really want the meat of the stuff. So can you tell us where they should go? Any like URLs, links, resources where they should go after hearing our conversation today, and where should they should head off to right now and get some cool stuff?
Yes, Robert, thank you for asking. Just visit my website, Back of the Room Productions, that's with an S.com. So backoftheroomproductions.com, and you will see an offer for 7 tools speakers need to get more business. Sign up, you'll get a PDF, and that has some really cool strategies and ideas for you to implement right away.
Super fantastic. I love it. So keeping it nice and simple, backoftheroomproductions.com. So go there right now. Don't even wait on it. Go there as you're listening to us talk, backoftheroomproductions.com, so you can claim that PDF report and figure out not just, I mean, who wants just one tool or two tools? You have 7 different tools, so that way you can be firing on all cylinders and do everything that you need to do to make sure that this speaking thing isn't something that you tried once and it didn't work, or it's not something where you just kind of dabbled in it a little bit. This is a thing that really transforms your business, so that way you can do more in less time and stop working so dang hard and talk to the people that you need to be talking to in order to grow your business. So Back of the Room Productions, and we'll see you there. And I appreciate everything you had to say with us, Alicia. And most importantly, I really like when people like work in the little micro stories to make a point. It makes things more entertaining and really like makes the point more concrete. So I appreciate that from you as well.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate your time, and just everybody start saying you're a speaker. Go out there and do it.
This is Robert Plank, and would you like to be a guest on the program? Do you have an idea for a future episode, or do you just want to tell us how we're doing? Get in touch with us right now at marketeroftheday.com/ask to let us know.